It's Fight IQ presented by RotoWire. Here to talk the biggest card of the year so far. It is UFC 241 from Anaheim, California. The main event, the baddest men on the planet, Daniel Cormier taking on Stipe Miocic for the World Heavyweight Championship. Our co-main event is one everyone's talking about. Nate Diaz taking on Anthony Showtime Pettis. I am your host for Fight IQ, the daily fantasy sniper, here with the co-host, the analyst, the important guys. As always, it is Joe, also known as Sun Tzu, Chris up there, who is at Real Chris Olson on Twitter. Guys, 241, awesome card for DraftKings and just for fight fans in general. It is a challenging card, but it's one that I think is a lot of fun. This is a true DFS test. This is not an easy card to build for, but one that's going to be fun to watch. Chris, how pumped are you?
I am very pumped. I was remarking on Twitter earlier this week that I can't remember a bigger main card, or at least one I'm more excited for. I'm excited for every fight. A couple of fights on the prelims, although not quite as excited. More towards when we get to the top of the prelims. We have a couple more interesting ones, but yeah, this main card, it's hard to beat. They're going to be good fights and good DraftKings fights, so you get the best of both worlds, and I'm excited for it.
There's two fights that aren't good fights, so let's just, it's from top to bottom a really solid card. There are two that I'm pretty mad.
Yeah, Mazzo Dobson. But before we talk about the fights, a bit of a throwback here for those of you who remember early MTV. And what was the first video ever shown on MTV was Video Killed the Radio Star. And that is not true, as evidenced by Sean Ihas, a.k.a. the DFS Sniper, making his Sirius FM debut on Fight Nation, no less. Channel 156, which is a channel dedicated to MMA, boxing, and professional wrestling. I probably don't listen to it as much as I should because of professional wrestling. But Sean had to be 10 minutes with Jimmy Smith. So Chris, I feel shaded. Chris and I, we had little spots with the RotoWire guys, and Sean is on with Jimmy Smith. Did they ever give you the link to the broadcast?
Yes, I have a link to download the MP3, which maybe I'll do that as we're recording here. Is when you guys are going on, I'll download that and post that up on Twitter so you can listen to it. It's about 12 and a half minutes.
Wow.
I didn't know Jimmy Smith was a co-host of the show.
Neither did I until I tuned in.
And it caught me off guard. And I was definitely talking way too fast at some points because I'm like, holy crap, I'm talking to
Jimmy Smith.
And I'm also, they asked some good basic questions. A lot of people who, if you're new and were listening last night, well, welcome. And hopefully that got us some new viewers. But kind of those typical DraftKings questions, the basic stuff that people need to know before they start playing. But I've gone over that so many times that I was kind of rolling through it. But I think we did a pretty good job explaining it.
No, it was great, dude.
It was a lot of fun. Kind of just Jimmy Smith afterward. I tweeted that out that it was awesome talking to him. He followed me back right away.
Wow!
Oh wow!
So I'm now followed by John Attic and Jimmy Smith, which is pretty damn cool.
Good for you, dude.
Man.
So thank you everybody at RotoWire. You guys, this is a fun show. We say it all the time. This is if you're new, we'll get into the fights in a second. But this is different than a traditional breakdown podcast. We do all that stuff. We also have a lot of fun here. I think it's one of the. I'm getting some comments about my volume, so let me try and deal with this. I think it's one of the more fun podcasts in all of MMA Twitter, MMA and DFS podcasting. Do you guys hear me volume all right? I got a new microphone too.
You're fine.
I think you're okay, but yeah, they're saying that you're distant. I don't know if they mean. I thought they might have meant you're just your personality today, but I think.
Whoa. Easy, Chris.
I think they just mean that you're low a little bit.
Just because you have a haircut and a clean trim beard for once doesn't mean.
I know, isn't it? I had to. It's the biggest card of the year, man. I gotta show some.
Chris is coming in a little loud, but I could deal with that.
Yeah, you'll get.
That'll be the case no matter what my mic volume is. I think I'm just
going
to scream at you guys.
All right. Well, I'm gonna look, guys. If you guys in chat can let me know when it sounds better, I'm gonna play with some settings here. Please let me know. Just say Chris is loud. That's funny in chat. If you can't tell, by the way, we do record these live on Fridays. on YouTube, so you can follow along on YouTube. Friday nights, go to the RotoWire channel, subscribe on YouTube. If you're listening after the fact or want to in the future, subscribe to RotoWire MMA on iTunes. Listen to the playback. Make sure you listen. Following all of us on Twitter. I'm at the DF Sniper. Joe is at Sunsu. Chris is at Real Chris Olson. Also, make sure you go to rotowire.com/free 10-day free trial to all their premium content. No credit card required. You also should know that we're going to be giving away a RotoWire prize pack later in this episode. We're going to have a contest. I'm not going to give it away quite yet. We're going to be predicting one fighter's points. You can probably guess who it's going to be, but I'm going to save it until we get to that point. And you'll have to give us the answer on Twitter. Use the hashtag FightIQ, and whoever closest at the end of tomorrow night will get a surprise pack. I think that's enough for the intro, guys. You got anything else before we jump into some fights?
Well, let's do it.
Go.
All right, let's roll with one of those fights I don't think we're super interested in. It is Shayna Dobson at 8,200 taking on Sabina Mazo at 8,000. Mazo minus 130. The comeback on Dobson is plus 110. Joe, you're the women's MMA whisperer, so we'll start with you. Is there any reason to really love this fight? And just in general, how do you see it going?
I might have to give that title up. I got Tisha Torres so wrong last week. Cost me some money there. And I honestly did not think that when Masaito got taken down by Viviana, that she would actually get submitted.
That was fantastic.
I know you liked it. I totally goofed. I've been ice cold, so for whatever that's worth, I don't have a hot take on this fight. I got a little bit of narrative. Mazo is a full-time fighter from what I can tell. She's young. She trains at King's MMA. Good camp. Dotson works full-time. I think that Mazo has every reason to improve. Training at King's full-time. She's, 22 years old. She got into the UFC by virtue of a spectacular, head kick knockout. She's had some spectacular wins in LFA, but got really wrestle-effed by Morose in her last fight. So that line is flipped. There's now actually some odds value. She is at 8K versus 8.2 for Dobson. So I would take a little stab with Mazo just based on the line value, the fact that I believe that if anyone's going to improve, it's going to be her, and the fact that I really like her camp. So I'll take Mazo based on all three of those things, but it's not a strong take by any means.
Yeah, I really don't like either side of this fight. I would lean Dobson just because I think she's younger in her career and not in age, but younger in her career, could still be improving, and she's stronger, more likely to get a finish if one of them's going to break the slate. I think it's Dobson, but overall, I think it's a pretty bad DraftKings fight. How about you, Chris?
Yeah. Well, Mazo, it's funny, like those head kick knockouts Joe's referring to. I mean, I said this in the last review that we did for her. They basically came against low competition that just sort of backed up straight with their hands down and got caught. So I was really off Mazo in that fight. It turned out to be correct. This fight, I have a little bit more trepidation about for Shayna Dobson, because Shayna Dobson just sort of stands in space. She doesn't really pressure all that much. She'll take the center, but again, not really a pressurer. So going to give Mazo a lot more time to get those kicks off. And she's not much of a wrestler. I like Shayna Dobson. I don't dislike her. I think she's got some power for this division, which is unique. She's got some good kicks of her own, but I just don't feel like her game is all that put together as yet. I sort of feel like she doesn't really have a plan. Mazo only has one thing that she's really good at, but I think Dobson is going to give her time to get her game working in a way that her last opponent didn't. So I'm taking Mazo here. Could we see another head kick knockout? I sort of doubt it, but she's definitely going to have some time to get those kicks working. And if you think that the head kick comes back, she could be a sneaky little play.
All right, moving on. We have Kang at 8,900 taking on Brandon Davis at 7,300. Kang the favorite minus 200 now. Brandon Davis plus 170. Davis gets taken down a lot. Kang's a good grappler who I wish would use his wrestling more. Davis was submitted last time out. this fight hits the ground, I think Kang wins. I think that's ultimately what's going to happen. I just don't know how quick it's going to be. In 8,900, Chris, how much can we really invest in Kang? And do you think Davis is a live enough underdog to have some shares in?
Well, as far as Davis goes, I guess the answer is yes. He's a brawler. I actually think Kang is pretty defensively responsible, although we did see him get himself clipped in that True to Ishihara fight. He thought he had Ishihara hurt. He waited in, got himself clipped. But I think in general, I think that might be a little misleading for people. I think in general, he's actually pretty defensively responsible. As far as Brandon Davis goes, look, I mean, he's a slugger and he's tough and he's going to stand and bang. So from that perspective, do you want a couple shares of him if you're making a lot of lineups? Sure, but I mean, I think we have to remember that Randy Costa was lighting him up on the feet in several exchanges before Brandon Davis. Actually, not to say that he got nothing done on the feet because he did, but the fight really turned when he was able to get him down to the ground and sort of choke him out. He got any hooks. He just sort of kind of dominated him there. But I think Kang is a much better striker than Brandon Davis, much more defensively responsible, as I said. I just think Davis gets hit too much. I think he gets hit clean too much. And I think Kang is too crafty. He can work a wrestling game if he chooses to do that. I think he's got a lot of tools here. And I actually think a sub 9K rather, Kang is pretty nice. I mean, I understand, and I said to myself, Brandon Davis is tough, but I think Kang is going to have his opportunities to tee off and pretty much take this fight where he wants it. So I like Kang quite a bit here, if not in GPP, certainly in cash game setting.
All right, guys, I'm changing my mic. Hopefully, I didn't blow anybody out, or it's not even worse, and you can hear me. Joe, how about for you?
You're fine. For me, you are. Chat, what do we think? Is he good?
But regardless, Joe, how about this?
Okay, so I agree that I think the point that you made, Sean, was that we want Kang to use his wrestling, and part of the problem is he didn't actually use it against Ishitara until he got hurt. So my fear is that, these are both pretty big guys at 135, is that if he takes a similar type of shot from Davis, that, it could do more damage than the shots he was taking from Ishitara. So what we really want to see is Kang go out there and use his wrestling in the beginning, because it's a bad stylistic matchup for Davis if Kang does take that approach. Are we going to see it? That's what gives me a little bit of trepidation here. Otherwise, I would tend to agree it's a bad stylistic matchup for Davis. I do think he's worth having a few shares, just again because of his size at 135, dropping down from featherweight. So I will pick Kang to win, but I think it's a playable fight on both sides, because of the narrative.
All right, guys, everyone's telling me to just focus on the show, but I'm going to move this mic even closer, and we're gonna see.
Wow,
if
what
works.
a fancy mic!
Right?
It is very professional.
I do enough podcasts, and it was only like $40-$50. So anyway, moving on. Hopefully this helps you guys out a little bit, and I'll get this squared away more for next week. All right, next fight is Hannah Cifers, 9,200, taking on Jodie Esquibel at 7,000. Cifers, the big favorite, minus 290. The comeback on Esquibel is plus 260. A lot of back and forth in this fight. Ultimately, Esquibel stays alive even when she loses. 30-40 points. Cifers. I want to point out, everyone's made out the size difference at weigh-ins. I went back and watched it again. Esquibel's wearing like 3-inch heels.
Yes.
Like
she's 5'1", Cifers is 5'2".
Exactly. Cifers is going to be a little taller. Esquibel's a little more built. The Cifers get a finish here. She has some power, but it's 115. I don't think it's really going to matter. Esquibel, I think, is a good cash game play. I think she's live, and I'm not sure Cifers is going to score 100-plus points. I don't think she's going to be very popular either. So I think Cifers wins, but I think Esquibel's to play on DK, and she's live to win. Joe, how about for you?
Yeah, so I played a round robin, and I asked people not to tell me because of how cold I've been, and I put Cifers in my round robin. With that said, I think Cifers is probably a better bet just as a pure fade on Jodie Esquibel than a DraftKings play, because I don't know that either one of these ladies are going to score a lot. And I don't even understand how Jodie Esquibel is getting this fight coming off of 3 losses.
Well, you know who her boyfriend is. Come on.
Well, I think her husband. It's Keith Jardine, the Dean of Mean, is her husband, and maybe that's why she's getting a fourth fight. But otherwise, she's done nothing really to merit it. I think they like Cifers a little bit. She's got some anxiety issues. She says the fight is tougher than the interview, but she is insanely strong. And I think she can put a hurting on Esquibel. Can she get a finish? I doubt it. So while I like her as a bet, I don't like either woman as a DraftKings play, and I will pick Cifers to win.
Chris, how about for you?
So I am not really a big fan of Hannah Cifers. I'm not a huge fan of Jodie Esquibel either. Let's get that straight. But Cifers, she is strong, as Joe said. She's got some power for this division, but she's very one note. Basically, just swing wild hooks and overhands. And Jodie Esquibel basically has two modes of fighting: either come at you like a bat out of hell and just try to pressure you, or try to work her counter game. Now, the pressuring thing didn't work against Angela Hill because, for all of Angela Hill's faults, what she does have is footwork. I don't think Hannah Cifers does have that kind of footwork. And I also think that her big looping, hooks and overhands are going to leave Esquibel some room to counter. Now, the question is, can she do it for 15 minutes without getting tagged really hard? Which is a good question. But I think that, Esquibel is at least, I think, going to try to put on volume, at least if we can take anything from her Angela Hill fight. And at 7,000 against somebody who, whose regional tape, you want to talk about somebody who wasn't fighting anybody, was fighting nobody. I know she's had 2 fights now. I know that she's fought some good competition now, but I just don't see that much in her game to make. I certainly don't think she's a 90 plus 100 play on DraftKings. I don't know if Esquibel is a great play either, although I think her floor is a little better, as you said. And I think she's got a shot to win her. And if she wins at like 66, 68, I mean, you could do worse. So I think I'm going to pick Esquibel here. I think that at least I can trust her to implement a game plan in a fight, and I don't think I can trust Cifers to do that. So I'm going to go ahead and pick Jodie Esquibel. God help me.
God help you is right, but I think either way she's the better DraftKings play. Anyway, Manny Bermudez, 8,400, taking on Kenney at 7,800. Bermudez, the favorite, minus 155. Comeback on Kenney, plus 135. This fight has been moved to a catchweight fight, 140. Both guys cutting a lot of weight. California State Athletic Commission, the UFC stepped in. Both made weight at 140. I like Bermudez in this fight. Kenney got a decision last time out against Ray Borg. I don't think he won the fight. Either way, he's a good scrambler, but Bermudez really slick submissions. Bermudez undefeated. I don't think Kenney's the guy to hand him his first L. I like Bermudez in this spot in the mid-range. Chris?
Yeah.
This is one of my most confident picks in the mid-range, so I'm assuming you are all over Kenney.
I am not. I thought about it before I looked at tape for this fight because I've never really been that big of a fan of Bermudez. I think he's kind of a one-trick pony. He's been showing a little bit of development lately. He actually showed a decent jab in his last fight against who was that? Benito Lopez. But the main reason I'm picking Bermudez here, and pretty comfortably at that, is because I just think at some point they're going to get into a tie-up or a scramble situation. I don't think it's avoidable with the way Kenney fights. And once that happens, I just think that Bermudez is going to be all over him. I don't think he's going to have enough jiu-jitsu to stand it. I mean, Kenney on the feet is basically just like a long-range kicking game. I don't think that holds up for 15 minutes. I don't think he's going to be able to circle out and avoid all of those tie-ups. And look, he's a wrestler by nature, so I'm sure that would be part of his game plan anyway. So long story short, I think this fight goes to where one guy wants it the most, and that guy is Bermudez, and I think you have to pick him for that reason. And as I said, I'm pretty confident.
Joe?
Yeah, I believe Bermudez is actually only a purple belt. So he's not this brilliant jiu-jitsu fighter. He's more of a specialist in getting and setting up certain types of submissions, which concerns me a little bit. With that said, he has scored 100 points in each one of his UFC wins, 100 or more. My concern is that Casey is pretty much better everywhere else. I'm going to have exposure to Bermudez. I think he's a great GPP play. I would certainly not play him in cash. I wish Kenney was actually a few $100s cheaper. But I'm going to pick Manny Bermudez for the victory, but I think he's a high ceiling, low floor type of GPP play. I would not recommend playing him in cash because of the fact that he is really a one-trick pony. I think, Chris, you shouldn't have strayed from your earlier narrative. I think you got it right. Although with his inside the distance prop at his price, he's a good play. I just would not want people to sleep on Kenney. He took that fight against Borg on short notice. We can debate whether he deserved the decision or not. I don't think he did, but I expect him to be better. I mean, the guy has got a good pedigree, and he's going up against the one-dimensional fighter. So I'm going to pick Bermudez, but I would recommend having some shares of Kenney.
You think he's going to be better once it hits the ground?
No, well, again, I think his wrestling is definitely better than Bermudez's. I think he's going to be better, meaning better in doing that he had a full camp. That's what I was trying to say.
Okay, sure.
I think he's going to actually show up better coming off of a full camp than he did against Borg, and he looked pretty good against Borg.
Okay. We'll see. I like Bermudez. I'm a believer in Bermudez, but I guess we'll see what happens.
Look, I'm picking him to win.
Yep.
And I think he's a great GPP play.
You know who's not a great GPP play? Drakkar Klose 9,000 taking on Christos Giagos at 7,200. Unless you want to go with the narrative, no one's going to own him. Which, all right, I guess I can kind of see that. Klose 9,000 only minus 165. Giagos plus 155. Giagos has had some gas tank issues. He excels when the fight hits the ground. Klose has got a good wrestling background, likes to lean on people, hasn't been terribly high output, finished people on the regionals, has not a lot lately. Either way, I think for me, I don't have a lot of interest in Klose on DraftKings, but I do think he wins the fight. I think he's a little better everywhere. Just doesn't score great. Joe.
Yeah. Klose. So here's the narrative. Klose is one of the group of fighters that left MMA Lab to go to Fight Ready. Klose has also publicly recognized that despite his record in the UFC, he's not a very exciting fighter. So wanting to rise up through the ranks of lightweight and maybe get a fight bonus or two, he realizes he has to go for finishes. So that's kind of my narrative. I like the camp change. I like that he's at Fight Ready. Very striking-oriented camp. We know he's got the wrestling in his back pocket. I do look for him to improve. And because he has actually been, a DraftKings bust, even in his wins, I think he's going to be low-owned. So I am actually looking at Klose as potentially a contrarian play. If the narrative comes into effect and he does go for the finish, he could come up with his first good score, on DraftKings. I'm going to pick him to win. I do think that, based on past precedent, he's a better bet than he is a DraftKings play. I do have him in my round robin. So I'm going to pick Klose to win. I think it's worth perhaps having a few shares of Giagos in case the over-aggressiveness of Klose leaves him open to something. So I certainly would not, talk you off of a few shares of Giagos. Just recognize that something was wrong with Hazovic in that last fight. I'm not sure what, but something was wrong with him. Excuse me. And, it helped Giagos get that win. So I'm picking Klose.
Yeah, what was wrong with him is he got his ass kicked.
Yeah,
anyway,
that too.
Chris.
Yeah, I like Giagos here. I like Drakkar Klose a lot. When he first came into the organization, he was much more of a finisher on the regional scene. I think he's kind of laid off the gas pedal here in his UFC fights, especially lately. I mean, you go back to the fight with Bobby Green, and he was getting backed up really at will. He sort of is become a extreme counter fighter, We can remember that from the Tamor fight where he was basically begging him to engage, which was a funny moment. But I think Giagos is look, he's a decent kickboxer. I think he's probably maybe a more accurate striker than Drakkar Klose. My only problem with Giagos really is that he tends to tire himself out wrestling. We saw that in each of his last two fights where the third round comes around and he's just sort of out of it. I think there was 6 and 5 takedowns respectively in those two fights. So, a lot of DraftKings points, and especially here as the dog, if he pulls it off, but he does tend to spend that gas tank. Even still, I'm going to go Giagos here. I can't trust Drakkar Klose to do enough in a fight with an active kickboxer who can also wrestle. I just think he can be out-volumed. I think he can be beat on the floor. So I'm going to take Giagos here.
Dog pick, like it. All right, moving on. We have, I'm going to get his name right, Cory. I always want to call him Cody. I couldn't tell you why. Cory Sandhagen, 8,700, taking on Raphael Assunção at 7,500. Sandhagen, minus 210. The hype train is in full effect against Raphael Assunção, who's plus 190. I'm on the hype train. I like Sandhagen. Love his volume. Aggressive guy. And any which way you slice it, Assunção scores like bleep, bleep, bleep on DraftKings, even in a win. Sandhagen might draw some volume out of him. I just think there's better places to go on this card. I think old school versus new school. Assunção is 37, fighting at 135. That's too old for me. Give me the newcomer, Sandhagen. Chris.
Yeah, I kind of wanted to pick Assunção here, but I don't think I can. I just feel like those leg kicks are going to be an issue. We've seen them as an issue before. Most recently in the second Moraes fight before he knocked him out. I like Sandhagen a lot. Look, there's a lot to like about Sandhagen. He's a very complete fighter. He uses leg kicks. He uses movement. He does body work. He can wrestle a little bit. So, I mean, he's got a lot of tools. The one thing that sort of gives me a little bit of pause is a couple times in that John Lineker fight, like right after he throws a strike in the pocket, sometimes you can catch him a little flat-footed where he just sort of puts his hands up and freezes. And Assunção is an accurate, powerful counterpuncher. So from that perspective, I think Assunção can get a little joy here. But overall, I just think that there's going to be too much volume. There's going to be too much movement. There's going to be too much attacking of known weaknesses of Assunção. And I think Cory Sandhagen's moving on up. So I got to take him to win here.
Joe.
Yeah. I mean, I guess part of the problem here is that Assunção has got really good defense. And I don't know that Sandhagen's going to be able to land the same volume of strikes that he has as in past fights, even against Lineker. I agree that what Assunção throws back is not going to be as hard as what a John Lineker throws. I think the smart play would be for Assunção to try to get this to the ground. I mean, we saw that Sandhagen almost lost his arm, when a fight got to the ground. So I just don't know how this is going to play out. I like the concept of playing Sandhagen. I don't think by virtue of a flash knockout that even at 37 that Assunção is deteriorated all that much. Maybe he is in the gatekeeper's role where these prospects have got to get through him to advance. So I'm going to pick Sandhagen to win. I just don't know whether he's going to have the same scoring opportunities here that he's had against past fighters, but I will take Sandhagen.
All right, moving on. We have Devonte Smith at 9,500 taking on a replacement of a replacement of a replacement. He's now fighting Khama Worthy, who I found out today through watching the weigh-ins with Ariel and Brad Akamoto, that they used to be training partners. They're cool. They're friends. Devonte Smith's game is built on devastating knockouts, and we've seen when fighters fight someone they know and get a little gun shy. I'm not saying Smith is going to do that here. I'm just saying it's something to think about. It's also, what's real interesting is 9,500. Everyone's on Devonte Smith, and the reason is he is minus now up to 1,000. Karma Worthy plus 650. Here's what you have to remember for DraftKings. For cash games, absolutely play him. Absolutely, he's going to be high owned. If he loses, not going to hurt you. In GPPs at 9,500, he better get that finish, and then other stuff has to happen for him to end up on the optimal lineup. And at 50%, if that's what the field owns him at, I'm not sure I want all that much Devonte Smith. I like these mid-range builds that I have. So I think Smith wins. No interest in Karma. It's a matter of, is he really going to end up on the optimal, and how popular is he going to be? Joe will actually.
Joe.
Yeah.
Yeah. So okay. So Smith is the proverbial free square in cash. Just a caution, and we haven't talked about any strategies yet. But if you're going to play Smith and you're going to stack, right, it's going to come down to 3 fighters in cash games. So you better make sure you have the right 3 fighters, because you could conceivably go 5-1 or 4-2 and not win any of your cash games if you have the wrong fighters, because you have to believe that in terms of strategy, there's going to be a large number of people in cash games that are going to stack and play Smith. So you better make sure that you have the right 3 additional fighters, or you're going to be hurting big time in cash. So I'll just put that out there. In GPPs, I think, leaving Smith off, and going more mid-range might be the play to differentiate yourself, because he's going to be so highly owned. With that said, with his inside the distance prop, it's going to be very hard to pass on playing Smith. With that said, I'll save it for my hot takes. I think you have to have shares of Smith. I think you should get creative if you want to differentiate yourself by leaving money on the table. But I will take Smith, obviously, to win. I'm going to have very little, if any, shares of Worthy. Depending on how many lineups I play, I may have 1. But I like Smith here. It's pretty easy. I think I would have actually liked him more, because he may have been a little less owned with his prior opponent. And I think his prior opponent had more of a puncher's chance than Worthy does. But let's take Smith, and let's be very, very careful on how we use him on DraftKings.
Chris.
Yeah, I agree with the cautious part. I mean, Devonte Smith, as much as I like him, his first fight was against Julian Erosa, who can't help but get hit. And then the second fight against Dong Ma was just kind of, he got caught, and that finished the fight. It wasn't like that was a high output fight before that happened. So, and 9,500, is a bit of a huge salary. I mean, you might struggle to get 10x out of most fighters. So he needs a quick finish here. I don't know if he gets it. I expect him to win. Didn't see much of the limited tape of Karma Worthy that I saw to make me think that he could compete with Smith in this fight. But I'm just a little nervous about it, especially as Sean said. There are a lot of mid-range fighters here where you can really expect those points, and I don't know if you can expect them here. And there's a lot of unknowns here. Again, as Sean said, a replacement of a replacement of a replacement, however far we go. So I'm picking Devonte Smith.
He tells 2 friends, and he tells 2 friends.
Yes, Calgon, exactly. But so yeah, I'm picking Devonte Smith. But as far as DraftKings go, I think he's gonna be so highly owned here. As everybody said, a free square. I saw it in chat as well. I think a fade here, even if you're not picking Worthy, can be beneficial, because if he scores, 75, 80, that's a lot of the field that look won't end up on the optimal lineup. So you can benefit simply by not playing him if he doesn't pay off. I like those odds, and I think that's the direction I'm going.
All right, moving on. Next up, we have, I think, one of the more interesting fights on the card. It is, at least for DraftKings, Ian Heinisch, 8,800, taking on Derek Brunson at 7,400. We're going to get some odds value here if memory serves. Heinisch minus 145. Comeback on Brunson is plus 125. Derek Brunson, in his last 11 fights, only 2 have made it out of the first round. His last fight against Elias Theodorou, who fights like Elias Theodorou, and a fight against Anderson Silva, who fights like Anderson Silva, and a fight that he should have won got robbed by the judges. Guy is kill or be killed. Ian Heinisch, look, guys, he's on a hype train right now. It's just he's fought two BJJ guys. He tired out Antonio Carlos Jr. I was all about ACJ in that fight. I was wrong. He survived the early storm. Heinisch, I think, needs, if he wants to get this fight to the ground, Derek Brunson's never been taken down in the UFC, ever. He's got a good American wrestling background. Heinisch, on the other hand, he can grapple. I don't think he's getting Brunson down, though. And then on the feet, we've seen Brunson have one-shot knockout power. Brunson, I think, is underpriced. The odds now indicate that, so he's going to be a little popular. I'm okay with that. Ian Heinisch, on the other hand, I want some shares of him because that Brunson chin could be gone. So I love this fight for GPPs. Even at the odds value on Brunson, I'm a little hesitant in cash games, but he is my pick here. I think he keeps the fight upright and eventually lands a big shot to put down Heinisch. Chris.
So the interesting thing about Ian Heinisch, both of his fights that he won in the UFC, or the two fights that he's had, they basically depended on him doing the wrestling version of the Homer Simpson, where his opponents took him down multiple times, basically whenever they wanted early in the fight. They got tired, and he pushed them over. I don't think, especially in a 3-round fight, I'm just not comfortable banking on the fact that my opponent is going to have success, a lot of success in an area, but then he's going to get tired, and then my guy is going to win. People were trying to do that with Gilbert Burns last week, and it didn't pay out because in a 3-round fight, you just don't have enough time. Even if the guy is dead in the 3rd round, you could already be up 2 rounds, and you could be stuck. And I would add, too, that Derek Brunson, even though that Elias Theodorou fight did make it out, did go to decision, he got 94 points in that one for the 4 takedowns and I think 5 transitions as I looked at it last. And look, Ian Heinisch has been taken down by anyone who's ever tried to take him down. Derek Brunson is big and strong. I don't think he's going to have a problem taking him down. Ian Heinisch is sort of a meat and potato striker. Derek Brunson is a very wild winging striker. I don't expect Heinisch to be as a good enough counter striker to really pick him off in those spots. So I think this is going to be another spot where Heinisch is going to have to wait for him to get tired, which could happen, but I'm not banking on it because I think Brunson's going to have a lot of success in the wrestling, and I think it's going to be enough to give him the fight and give him a nice score. So, yeah, I'm taking Brunson.
Joe.
Wow, this is crazy because I actually, earlier in the week, and I'm not going to change my pick on the RotoWire site, but earlier in the week, I did pick Heinisch for the win here, but I'm actually going to go with Brunson on the show. So it's going to be like a clean sweep of people going with the dog. And let me just put this out there. Brunson is now plus 115. So this is the odds are really, really, really tight going in Brunson's favor here. So there's a lot of line value. Unfortunately, I think that's going to translate into ownership. I like the fact that Brunson is no longer doing his fight camps out of his backyard. I think that's good. Although for the life of me, I'm drawing a complete blank as to where he did this camp. I want to say
Hard Knocks 365.
Hard Knocks 365. That's right. Henry Huff. Okay. Thank you, Sean. I was struggling on Alpha to figure out where he was doing his camp. So I think that's positive. My only concern here, it's not my only concern, and it's why I will have a share or two of Heinisch, is Brunson has not exhibited, how do we say it, the proper level of fight IQ in the past.
He couldn't be on this show.
Yeah, it would be hard. Yeah, we would have to rename it. So for that very reason, I'm a little concerned, but I guess I'm going to complete the trifecta here and go with Brunson.
All right, moving on. We have, I almost skipped a fight. Sadiq Youssef, 9,300, taking on Gabriel Mowgli Benitez at 6,900. Sadiq Youssef, minus 265. Come back on Benitez, plus 245. I love Sadiq Youssef. He's just in a weird price range for this fight. I don't think Benitez is going to be able to get him down. He likes to stand and trade. Standing and trading with Youssef is a very, very bad idea. I think Youssef will get a finish here. It's a matter of, does he get it in the first round, and is he on the optimal? I will have shares of Youssef. I think he's pretty safe. Benitez, tough vet. I believe in Youssef. It's, do you believe in the prospect? I think is what this fight comes down to. Joe, do you believe in the prospect?
Yeah, I'm not as convinced. Benitez is 3-1 in his last 4 UFC fights. He's coming off of a 110-point performance. Yes, it was against Bandalay. He ate, Jason Knight's lunch for him. He did lose to Barzola. And then obviously Sam Cecilia. So he hasn't fought the best competition. But Marias, he looked good against Youssef looked good against Marias. I think really this line is a bit wide, and I don't like his price all that much. I will definitely be under market, and I will have shares of Benitez. Look, Youssef could be the next great African fighter. But he hasn't, his fight against Ashcan.
Deep burn, Joe. Deep burn.
Yeah. That was nice. Okay. He got a KO. He scored 102 points, but Marias was tough. That was a really good step up for him. I honestly think that Benitez has got some of the best kicks, in the UFC. And if he can work Youssef's legs, I think he can, be successful. So I'm not at that point where I'm going to pick a 6.9K fighter to win, but I do advise having some shares. It really opens a lot of things up. I will pick officially Youssef to win the fight, but I do not have nearly the same level of confidence as the radio star does. So let's see where Chris is going to go with this.
Chris?
Well, thank you, Joe, for that. He's trying to take your job there, Sean. He's still bitter about that radio appearance.
I am.
Jimmy Smith, I think. But I actually agree with Joe in the sense that I think the line's a little wide. I do think Youssef wins, but Benitez likes to play an outside range kicking game. He's got a good series of kicks. The reason why I think Youssef wins is because I think Youssef closes him down pretty effectively. I think he makes it harder for him to use those kicks. Youssef has his own shin kicks that are effective. So I think that Youssef is going to win just by virtue of his pressure and his power. But I don't know that he necessarily makes value here. I don't know if he gets Benitez out of there early. I think Benitez is going to start off using his footwork. I think he's going to, as I said, try and stay on the outside for as long as he can and sort of try to pick him off. I think ultimately the pressure gets him, but I don't know when that's going to happen. So the pick is Youssef. I like him just as much as anybody else in terms of is he a prospect, but I don't know if he gets Benitez out of there / does enough damage to score enough points to pay off that salary.
All right, next fight up, Yoel Romero, 8,600, taking on Paulo Bohashina Costa at 7,600. The Eraser is also seeing some line movement in his direction. Romero is minus 130. The Eraser is plus 120. Great GPP fight. I think it ends inside the distance. Costa's forward pressure, kill or be killed, can be taken down. Guys, he is a definition of a hype train. I'm not saying he's not going to win. I'm just saying he's 4-0 in the UFC, and 2 of those wins are against Gareth McClellan and Olawale Bamboche. That's right. He's got he's win against somebody who's we all call the Bang Bus, and somebody who half the people listening probably don't even know who he is. He's going to march forward and try and knock out Romero. Romero can be hit, can be rocked, but Costa was taken down by Olawale Bamboche. Yoel Romero is a beast of a wrestler, if you have forgotten from the Robert Whittaker fights. Romero should win this fight, skill for skill. He is better. That's just what I believe. But in terms of both in their prime anyway, a prime Romero kills Costa, but Romero is 40-something. He is tough weight cuts. Costa is powerful. Romero's been in those wars. Where is it going to go? I still picking Romero. I'm still pretty confident in him. I'm a little concerned the line keeps moving towards Costa, but regardless in GPPs, I want this fight. A little too risky for cash games for me. Chris, start us off.
Yeah, well, I think I have the distinct honor of being the only one of our staff to actually pick Costa to win this fight. And the reason that I did was because, look, Yoel Romero, as much as I love him and as absolutely frightening as he can be in the cage, he starts slow. He just does. He was losing that Chris Weidman fight until that knee. He lost the first round of the Rockhold fight. And this is not going to be this is not going to be a 5-round fight. He's not going to have enough time where, like in the second Robert Whittaker fight, he literally took the entire first round off to manage his energy. He's not going to have the luxury to do stuff like that here. And look, can he rock Costa with a counter and change course of the fight? Of course he can. He can rock anyone at any time. But for a guy who's, I won't say as athletically gifted as he is, but at least maybe can compete with him in the athleticism department, who also throws in combination, which is a big key for me here, which is something that Yoel Romero doesn't do. A guy who's gonna march you forward and throw in combination. Now, the wrestling is a good key factor here, but what I'll say is that, I mean, that's more of something that could tire him out, and Yoel Romero is not a submission artist. So he's basically just a control wrestler. Even in those takedowns against Robert Whittaker, he didn't get much done. I'm not really relying on that for him to play like a wrestling game for 3 rounds. I would be very surprised if that's the way this fight goes. Maybe not very surprised. I mean, I suppose it could happen. He's a wrestler after all, but I don't expect that to happen. And I just think Costa is going to, as I said, march him down. He's going to throw in combination, and he's going to overwhelm Yoel before Yoel can make his reads and explode out with that kill shot that he loves so much. So I just think that it might be a little too much. It might be a little too much pouring on the pressure. It might be a little bit of a pace that Yoel doesn't like, and for that reason, I'm going to pick Costa.
If the fight stays up, you could be right. If the fight hits the ground, if Yoel decides to wrestle, Costa's got problems. But I can't say Costa's not live.
I don't deny that he'll be able to get him down, but I mean, does he really even do that much when he gets him there? And then so maybe he gets him down, and then maybe they stalemate, he stands back up. You know, I just feel like, I mean, this isn't. He's not. What I'm saying is he's not the submission threat or a control guy on the ground that would necessitate that the first time he gets taken down would be the end of the fight or the round.
But you can wear him out. We've seen Costa has been slowed. I'm saying the wrestling can wear him out, and that changes the fight.
Sure, but it might be a game of diminishing returns at that point to who gets the most tired. So that'll be interesting too, I guess.
Two big muscly guys tired in the 3rd round, and all my DraftKings lineups are
yeah, exactly.
That sounds fun. Joe, how about you?
Yeah, I'm not sure how anyone could be really confident in Costa. Look, what he's done is impressive. It's the unfortunate. To be real, he's done it against like the hospital ward of the UFC. The guys that he's looked really good against. Uriah Hall, okay. I mean, Hall actually had his moments against Costa. This is such a huge step up for him. I mean, I get the scoring, and to kind of add to the narrative, Romero has not been a great DraftKings play on DK. I mean, his 5-round loss against Whittaker was actually one of his better DraftKings performances. Getting 91 points. And that was a 5-round fight. I really wish this was a 5-round fight. I'd be a lot more confident in Romero as a DraftKings play. Romero is another one of those fighters that I put in my round robin. I do like him here to get the win. I think, now again, Romero has been off for over a year. So has Costa. So neither one of these guys have been, super active. I got to take Romero here until he loses. I've got to stay with him. I think he's the kind of fighter that actually changes lives. I mean, he may have like permanently damaged Whittaker. And I don't see why he couldn't do that against the Yoel Romero, who's not nearly as technical. So I'm going to pick Yoel Romero. I'm sorry, against Costa. I'm going to pick Yoel Romero here to get the win. I'll have a few shares of Costa just because his ceiling is pretty high, but to get that ceiling, he's going to have to finish Yoel Romero, which I would be surprised. It can happen, but I think to get that ceiling, he needs a finish, and I don't see him getting it here. So this could be actually a relatively low-scoring decision, but I'm going to pick Yoel Romero.
All right, let's move on to the co-main event, and everybody should pay attention to this one. This is where we're going to have our contest, RotoWire prize pack. All right, so the fight is, let me intro it first, Anthony Showtime Pettis, 8,300, taking on Nate Diaz, 7,900. making his long-awaited return. The odds in this fight, Pettis is the favorite, -130. Nate Diaz smoking up during open workouts. He's +120, and he is who our contest will be about. So everybody in chat, this is what you got to do. Log on to Twitter. You have to be following all three of us. Chris is at Real Chris Olsen. Joe is at Sunsu. I'm at the DF Sniper. Use the hashtag FightIQ and tell us how many DraftKings points Nate Diaz is going to score. Closest to the right answer wins. Doesn't matter if you're over or under. Close to the right answer wins. If two of you happen to guess the same number, first one to tweet us is the winner. So Nate Diaz, total points, hashtag FightIQ. Winner gets a RotoWire prize pack. That being said, guys, how do you have this fight? It should be 3 rounds of striking. Should be fun. Personally, I lean Pettis, but I think Diaz is the better DraftKings play. Should he pull it off? It's a fight I've been going back and forth on. I think it's totally up in the air. Joe.
Yeah. I think this fight is probably going to be higher owned than it should be. If it stays standing, it could be a relatively low scoring fight by the winner, which is why I certainly think Nate Diaz is the better play. If it stays standing and goes to decision, which I think is the favored, I think going to decision is the favored betting line proposition. Look, we had a 5-round fight where Nate Diaz landed 166 significant strikes against McNuggets. That was a really good performance, 88 points. Got a takedown. I think he actually won that fight personally. He should be coming off of a 3-fight winning streak. He definitely has the ability to land output. I wish this was a 5-round fight. I know I said that last fight too. I'd love to see this as a 5-round fight. Pettis, on the other hand, is a few fights removed from fighting at 145. Diaz is probably going to be 190 to 200 pounds at fight time. So I think he will have somewhat of a size and strength advantage over Pettis. I'm not too attracted to Pettis at 8.7K because I don't see him finishing. Not 8.7. I'm sorry.
8.3.
He's 8.3. Sorry. I don't see him finishing Diaz. Also, he's not a great scorer. I mean, he's got only one DraftKings line where he scored 100 points or higher. He's coming off of what I would call a flash KO of Thompson in a fight that he was losing. Prior to that, 33 points in a loss against Ferguson, 75 points in a submission win against Chiesa. He's not a high output striker. So if this fight stays standing without a finish, it could be low scoring. Diaz has got the much higher ceiling. I'm going to pick Diaz to win just because. But I think this fight is going to be way too highly owned. But I do like Diaz. I think he's a better DraftKings play. I'll have a share or two of Pettis in case there's real ring rust on Diaz not having fought in 3 years. I don't expect to see that. But I will pick Diaz, and I will definitely endorse Diaz as the better DraftKings play. Chris.
Okay. Sean's falling asleep, but okay, I'll go. Just the fight first, and then we'll get to. Oh wait, can we hear Sean? Sean, can we hear you?
I can.
Yeah, I was talking. You guys don't have me?
Oh no, we have you. We have you. Okay.
Yeah, we're having a bit of an echo issue in case anybody's picking up on that.
I think we're all right. Chad, are we echoing? I think we're okay. Anyway, I'm gonna go, and we'll see. We'll see if Chad has it. But I feel like there's a counter narrative happening in this fight that I've seen in the lead up, where it's like, oh well, Nate Diaz isn't that susceptible to leg kicks. I mean, he is, but he checks a little. I went back and watched that second Conor fight. I think he checked like 1 out of like 25, literally, and I was counting until I gave up and I had all the information I needed. Nate Diaz doesn't check leg kicks. He might check 1 or 2, but that's it. Conor had him barely able to stand by the end of the second. To the extent that Nate Diaz had success in either of the fights, but in the second one more. The first one, the straight left hand rocked him. But in the second fight, to the extent he had his success, it was because Conor was tired. I don't think Pettis is going to get that level of tired. I think the way that Pettis fought Wonderboy Thompson is the blueprint here. Stay right in his face, kick his legs. Connor was lighting him up with pull counters basically all fight, which just, if you don't know what that is, somebody throws a punch, you move your head out of the way, you throw the punch. So he was doing that all fight. And I think Nate Diaz relies on his toughness, and he relies on the fact that he is gonna outlast you to win the fight. I think that if Anthony Pettis stays on his pressure and stays on his leg kicks, I think he's going to mess him up, quite frankly. And I hate saying that because I like Nate Diaz. I like that he's smoking up at the open workouts. I like, a lot of fighters say they don't care. He actually means it. So I admire that about him. But I think he loses this fight, and I think it's Anthony Pettis pretty one-sided. So
wow. What about DraftKings, Chris? Is he a good DraftKings play?
Yeah, no. I think 8,300 is enough. Like, I could definitely see an 85 to 90 in a decision win. Just by the output. Look, Nate's one of those fighters.
What output though? He has no. Pettis does not have output.
Well, but Nate's one of those fighters where we talk about it. Nate's one of those fighters where he's going to draw the output out of you. And I think we saw even a little bit more output in the Wonderboy fight, where he was on him constantly, throwing those leg kicks constantly, and those are going to add up in a fight like this. So I think those two things, the opponent and perhaps a change in style, maybe a more aggressive kind of in-your-face style that Pettis showed in the Wonderboy fight, I think those are both going to be assets here for high scoring.
Let me ask you a question, Chris. I'm gonna open this up, and I know the answer, so it's probably not fair.
All right.
And how many fights going on? Let's see. Pettis has got 1, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. How many times did he score over 60 significant strikes going back 9 fights to 2015?
You tell me.
1.
Okay.
And his highest significant strike output was 80 against Miller in 2017. So, I mean, you can say Nate Diaz is going to bring out the striking in him, but he's not a guy that throws at a high volume. I mean, so
but we've seen that before, have we not? Where a typically low volume striker will become a high volume striker based on the opponent.
Can you give us an example?
Versus who was it? Against Angela Hill.
Okay, women's MMA. Okay, so
well, if you're gonna throw up all these barriers now,
I'm just saying, dude. Okay, so I think that you're doing our millions of viewers a disservice if you think that Pettis is going to get 85 to 90 in a stand-up striking battle that goes to decision with no takedowns and no knockdowns.
So you think if this stays standing, Nate Diaz is going to just have a slow kickboxing match with him? That's what you think is going to happen?
I just don't think Pettis has got the volume in him. I just don't think he throws that way.
But if one guy's throwing, the other guy has to. Like if Nate's in his face, it's going to necessitate that.
Or you could run away.
He could. I mean, do you see him as the running away type? I don't know.
Pettis gets very discouraged if things aren't going his way.
Okay,
now, what works in his favor is that Diaz is a slow starter. I will give you that, right? So if Pettis gets out and starts fast, that'll set the tone for the fight. However, if Diaz catches him with something, if he takes him down, if he spends some time on his back,
well, of course, I'm not.
I think it's going to. Well, yeah, but I mean, he's not a guy to rise above adversity. That's just not in his DNA. That's not how he fights.
I mean, as far as that narrative goes, we were all saying that about Bronx until he showed us that he could. So I mean,
okay,
I don't know about all that. I think that this is weight class for him.
I'm going to put a bow on this one.
Okay.
All right. Here,
I don't think it's a good weight class, but go ahead.
During that, I think we can all agree Diaz is a slow start.
Sean, you're cutting out. Okay.
The volume of Diaz slows down. He needs to control the pace of the fight using the leg kicks early. If Diaz starts putting on volume quickly, I think Diaz wins this fight, and that's I think what Joe is saying, relatively low, is that for him to win, I think he needs those early leg kicks that slows down the pace of the fight. I think if he gets in that fight, I think it's the type of fight he could lose. But this very well could be a fight where it's a split decision, and we're like, I don't know who won that fight.
Sean, you're going in and out a little bit. I don't know if there's anything you can do, but you're going in and out a little bit.
It's your fancy new $40 mic. Okay, we're good.
It's really weird. It may be any better now. All right.
Now you're good.
This next week. Yeah, it's weird. It's not picking everything up as well as it should. Maybe it is the mic. Anywho. The volume for Pettis isn't guaranteed because of Diaz, because the type of fight he wins gets slowed down. While my up in the screen here, let's move on to our main event, which is Daniel Cormier at 8,500 taking on Stipe Miocic at 77. The rematch, I think it goes differently. I think both men came in lighter, by the way. I think you could stack it up in cash just because there's some grappling, and I think enough people roster Stipe where it won't hurt you. And if Stipe wins, you better have him in cash. The stack, I can understand if you get away from it. I don't mind it. I do think Cormier wins. I think his grappling will shine through eventually. He's a good I know he didn't have tremendous success with it in the first fight, but that's because his dirty boxing was so good. He was able to box him up. So
focus on the word dirty.
The only person. Yeah, that's fair. I had a weird lag in the chat. I think it's my internet. Anyway, I will say I'm the only person from RotoWire who picked DC. So give me Cormier in this one, but play both sides. High scoring fight. Chris, start us off.
Yeah. The reason why I picked Stipe here was because I picked Stipe in the first fight, and I didn't really see anything in that fight that would make me think I had to change my pick. I think that I'm not a person who thinks that Cormier landed a lucky shot, because we've seen him do that before. He likes to sort of do that, the collar tie and uppercut in the clinch. So he landed a shot that he likes to land, and it was a good shot. But I feel like Stipe beats him in literally every other range, on the feet and also in the wrestling. The one wrestling exchange they had, Stipe won it. It was clear. Now that was only one exchange. You could say it might go different if they had time to, suss it out a little bit and do a little bit more. But be as it may, we can only go by what we see. And I think that, look, I don't think this is by any means an easy fight for Stipe. I think that Cormier showed us a lot in that fight. He was actually throwing in combination. He actually showed off a good little jab. He busted up Stipe's face a little bit, but I do think, even though Stipe was wearing it a bit more than DC, I think that Stipe got the better of those exchanges, and Stipe was able to back him up consistently. So the only thing, in my view, that Stipe has to do differently here is stay out of the clinch, and not even every clinch position. Like when they're against the fence, he's fine. It's that collar tie position where Cormier can uppercut. And if you're going to tell me that Cormier wins the fight in that one range, I'll say, sure, absolutely he does. But I don't think it's enough to change my pick. I think Stipe has too many advantages here. I don't think he's getting caught again. I like him to win the fight.
Joe?
Yeah, I'm all in with you, Chris. I think Stipe took more damage from a half a dozen eye pokes than he did from any of Cormier's punches. The other part of this is I think this is more meaningful, this fight for Stipe. I mean, look, Lewis, got a gift payday against Derek Lewis. I'm sorry, Cormier got a gift payday against Derek Lewis. He really wanted the Brock Lesnar fight. He's made his money. He's got a successful career as a broadcaster. He's set. He's 40 years old. He's not going to fight John Jones. There's no way he's going down to 205. He doesn't want to fight him at heavyweight. This is probably it for him. This means a lot more to Stipe. The other thing is Stipe has only once in his career not scored 100 DraftKings points in a win, and that goes back to his first fight on DraftKings in 2014 against Gonzaga, who he put up 67 points in a decision win. So I love the ceiling of Stipe. I don't see a half a dozen eye pokes in this fight. At least I hope not. So I'm going to be definitely higher. I'm going to have some shares of DC because look, he can get him. But I like Stipe. I love his price. I think he's going to be pretty highly owned. I do not like the stack. Surprise, surprise. But I do like Stipe here. I will have some shares of DC, but give me Stipe for the victory by finish.
All right, guys, we need hot takes in chat. Before we get to ours, I'm going to remind everybody one last time in the contest to get a RotoWire prize pack. Use the hashtag FightIQ on Twitter. Make sure you're following all three of us and tell us how many points Nate Diaz is going to score. All right, guys, hot takes. I almost feel like I should just use the hot takes Cormier wins again because everyone seems to be off him, but you guys are freaking bananas.
Okay, so here's my hot take. There will not be a 9K fighter on the optimal
You
lineup.
son of a... That was exactly mine.
Yeah, okay.
That was exactly mine. All right. Jesus. All right, so I'm going to get even more creative here, and we're going to say... Oh, man. We're going to see... Let me go a different way then. 12 fights. We're going to see... I got to get really, really aggressive. All right, Chris, if you have one, go ahead. I want to count up my exactly what I'm calling.
Okay, I'm gonna say Jodie Esquibel 10 to 12x.
Wow, that is a hot take.
Holy God, you guys, this is crazy.
Hey, well, this is it's a big card, man. We got to come with our A stuff here. Don't disappoint, Sean. Let's go.
We are going to see one of the best cards of the year. We have 12 fights. Look at this. Every male fight ends in a finish. 10 finishes on this card.
Wow.
There you go.
Okay. Very good.
To see it.
And the one I'm mostly worried about is Drakkar Klose, Giagos, but
yeah,
I'm going 10.
So okay.
That is a tough one. Yeah.
In chat here, hot take: Sandhagen will be a future champion within a year. I like that, but we need one for this card. All right, we're gonna go with our boy, whose name I just can't say. Nandalal. I'm sorry, buddy.
Call him his. Okay, so his friends call him Nan, like the Indian bread.
Oh, that's right. Okay.
So call him Nan.
Our friend Nan says Drakkar and Brandon Davis on the winning lineup.
Oh my goodness.
Smoking hot.
Wow, that is a hot take.
One Way says Stipe wins by submission.
Ah, yeah. Wow. No, I actually kind of like that.
I'd like to see that.
All right, guys, make sure you enjoy UFC 241. Go to rotowire.com/free, 10-day free trial to all their premium content. No credit card required. Make sure you subscribe to the podcast, both on YouTube and on iTunes. RotoWire on YouTube, RotoWire MMA on iTunes. Guys, unless you got anything else, we're going to get out of here and we can watch these 10 finishes on UFC.
And we got a week off, so no show next week.
Yeah. Finally, a week off. We were in a stretch of what was this, 9 straight?
Yeah, we have a week off, and then we've got we got the China card with
oh yes,
title fight, 115 title fight.
My office is finally set up, and tomorrow I'm putting in my dual TVs to watch this card, and then we have a week off. This is ridiculous.
Yeah,
sounds good, dude.
Timing. All right, guys. Good luck in your contest. We'll see you next week.
All right, guys. Later.
Peace.